A funeral home called me last minute to live stream a service, and I'm going to walk you through the setup that I use for this. Even in this current world of video and live streaming, a lot of funeral homes don't offer live streaming, even if they have their own chapel. And especially if they're having a funeral at an off-site location, they don't offer live streaming services because they just don't know how to do it. It's not their expertise. And so this is where I come into play. Now, because this funeral service was just a couple of days away, I only wanted to take what I absolutely needed. And so I needed to gather some information ahead of time from the funeral home to understand what I was really getting into. Now, this was a very simple setup as it pertains to the live streaming aspect itself. Now, the first thing I needed to do was provide the funeral home a link so that the attendees could actually watch the service. Now, YoloCast is a service provided by YOLO Live. Now, YOLO Live has given me access to their platform for the entire year, and it's really beneficial in situations that I ran to for this one. Because in order to give a link to the funeral home, I didn't want to use YouTube, I didn't want to use Facebook, and they didn't have access to those platforms anyway. So having YOLOcast made it easy for me to send my live stream to the YOLOcast server and then provide them a URL for the attendees to watch the funeral. Now, they went and chose the option to just simply put in a link to redirect to my YOLO Live website, or they could have also embedded the YOLOcast video into their site, which would probably need someone that was a little bit more familiar with their website. So simply being able to take a website URL and add it to their obituary section made it easy for viewers to know where the live stream was going to be streamed to. Now, because of my relationship with YOLO Live, they also gave me access to their YOLO Box Pro a few months back. And the YOLO Box Pro is the main component that I use to produce the live stream. Now, if you're not familiar with the YOLO Box Pro, it's an all-in-one and recording device that allowed me to live stream and produce this event. Now, because I had limited knowledge of what I was getting into with the facility, I wanted to have a small footprint. And thank goodness I decided to take this device because I really only had a 2 foot by 2 foot space to work with. I was in the back of the church and there was going to be a lot of people there. And there were a lot of people there. So having a very small footprint was perfect. Having everything mounted essentially on this one tripod was pretty much the only way I was going to be able to pull off this live stream. Now, because the YOLO Box is a small all-in-one recording and live streaming unit, I was able to mount it directly onto my tripod and produce the live stream. By simply using YOLOcast and connecting that to the YOLOcast server that I set up ahead of time, my live stream was already set to go. I just needed to physically set up everything. And so in addition to using the YOLO Box, I used my two Sony FX30 cameras, which I plugged directly into the YOLO Box via HDMI cables. So the video setup was pretty straightforward, but I also needed to consider the audio. And in this church, they don't have a dedicated audio engineer or sound person. Their audio setup was actually in a closet and they have no one managing it. They just literally turn it on and turn it off, and that's it. And so that connection became a little bit of a challenge. And so rather than setting up some type of Bluetooth or remote audio transmitter and receiver, I had to use my onboard shotgun microphone to capture the sound in the room. So I used the Shure VP83F and had it attached on top of my camera and routed my audio into the YOLO Box Pro as well. And I was able to monitor it with my Shure headphones using the headphone jack on the YOLO Box. So that's the video setup and that was the audio setup. Now, because the service was only an hour and a half, I didn't need to bring a whole bunch of backups, but I like to have backups. So not only was I recording internally into both of my cameras, I was also recording onto the YOLO Box Pro as well, because the client did want a recording of the service after it was done. Now, I could have simply provided them the recording from the YOLOcast server that I streamed to, but having a SD card available for them right after the service just made things that much more simple. Now, another backup consideration that I always think about is power, and I did bring my own power strip and my own backup power supply because I never know if I'm going to have access to an electrical outlet. In this case, I did have access, which was great, but I also brought backup batteries for my cameras just in case. Now, one of the things I do need to invest in is a second dummy battery for my FX30 because I use a dummy battery right now for this camera. These mirrorless cameras can run for hours, and by using a dummy battery, I don't have to worry about power or the battery just running out and dying on me. Now, it may even come to your surprise that as much as I talk about PTZ cameras on this channel, I also use mirrorless cameras in some situations. And this was one of those situations where I didn't need a joystick, I didn't need the pan, tilt, zoom operations because I could do that myself pretty easy in this short time frame of this service. So I knew my batteries would be sufficient enough for my camera, but also having a dummy battery is what I like to rely on because in case I do run for multiple hours, dummy batteries give me that continuous power that I need because these mirrorless cameras are built to run a long time. Now, the Sony FX30 even has a built-in internal fan, which never kicked on for the length of this live stream. Now, I'll link in the description of everything that I used to produce this live stream if you're interested in checking those out, but you may want to stay tuned for this next video where I talk about some of the hiccups that I had and one of the benefits of YOLOcast that I don't think people realize until you run into the situation.